Former and current Chuck E. Cheese workers, what are some of the worst things to happen to you while working? One time at Chuck E. Cheese when I was working there, some food fight broke out, and one kid chucked his entire cake straight at Chucky, and then he cried about how he didn't get a cake. The kid's mom went into the bathroom and she was in there for a good 15 minutes. I went in there to ask what was up and I saw her having a mental breakdown. Turns out she spent hours making that cake special for him and it was all ruined in about 30 seconds. Story 2. I was the technician at a Chuck E. Cheese in high school. One day I was covering someone and I had to wear the suit and do the show. On my way back to the room, a little kid runs up to see Chucky and stabbed me in the ankle with a pencil as hard as he could. I rushed into the bathroom and took off the pants portion of the suit, pulled down my sock, and a bunch of blood poured out. Didn't even go home early. Boss just had me stand at the door. This is just gonna be a lot of kids being awful people, isn't it? And I know it's not their fault, they don't really know everything yet, but I feel like this is just gonna be a lot of kids doing stupid stuff. It's a Chuck E. Cheese, so I don't know what else I expect. Story 3. Had a complaint that a kid was dipping toilet paper into a woman's toilet and then eating it. He was. Same kid beat me mercilessly while I was wearing the Rat in the Hat suit. He did this while screaming, "Man in the suit!" The best was a complaint about the same kid eating from other families' tables. He was, and he looked them dead in the eyes while doing it. These were all on different days. They must have provided some solid patronage for you to not ban them from the store. This sounds like a problem child, no matter which way you slice it. Story 4. I worked at Chuck E. Cheese for a year in high school. It was the worst job I ever had. The absolute worst days was having to clean crap and vomit out of the sky tubes. 2 separate occasions, several hours apart. I've never been the same since. The funniest thing, though, was the coworkers who had a trio in the closet where we kept the Chuck E. Cheese costume. Guy asked me to cover for him during closing and took 2 other coworkers into the closet and banged them. Thing is, there was a camera in that closet. That was the last time I ever saw all 3 of them. Story 5. Former. Anytime a kid threw up in the ball pit was an especially horrible day. There were several instances during the 6 years I worked there, but these times were quite memorable. There were 2 ways you could do this. 1. A large both sides open cardboard box to corner off the affected area. We had very large netting bags so you could gather all the balls and take them outside and they would be sprayed off. Or 2. If the spew was all up in the ball pit, then all the frickin' balls had to be gathered, sprayed off, and the inside liner that held the balls had to be wiped down and cleaned. Only good thing about having to take out all the balls was that you could find some pretty good stuff that happened to be in people's pockets and fell out. Money, pocket knives, and even rings. Can you imagine losing your wedding ring in a Chuck E. Cheese ball pit? If that's not a sign from God or the great mouse above to divorce, I don't know what is. Story 6. The worst part was wearing that rat suit after this one dude was in it. He took it serious and would get up on the prize tables and get the kids to chant, "Chucky, Chucky." I could frickin' hear it in the kitchen over the noise and music. Dude was butt naked in the suit, and he sweat a lot. I probably have hepatitis. Best part was, though, taking the leftover pizza dough into the back lot after closing and having a 1v1 death match, throwing softball-sized dough balls at each other's heads. Story 7. I worked at a Chuck E. Cheese in high school in a wealthy area, so I got the bright idea to neatly fold off and rip off part of the bill that stated, "Tips are included in the cost." They weren't. I got my coworkers in on it, and eventually we started presenting the bills to each other's parties and saying, "If you'd like to tip your host, they can only accept cash," to plant the idea in the parents' heads. One day we got caught and I got blamed. I wasn't allowed to host parties anymore. Instead, the GM hired his family and friends and allowed them to abuse my system. It was a gold mine because sometimes I would take home $200 in cash as a 16-year-old. I didn't even make that in 2 weekends of hourly pay. Story 8. Former employee of 9-ish months. 1. Very old woman peeing on the carpet in the entrance while standing up. 2. Cleaning pee out of the sky tubes after complaint that it got in a kid's eyes and he couldn't see. 3. Walking into the bathroom to find an abandoned pair of underwear with poop in it. Took everything I had to not throw up when throwing it away. 4. While in the Chucky suit being asked by a large black man wearing all blue, "Why you got all that red on, cuh?" 5. Asking a mute girl if she wanted to put her candles on her cake and being told she can't talk by her parents. There were definitely many more less than enjoyable experiences, but these are the ones that stand out to me. Story 9. Former manager from like 10 to 15 years ago checking in. I have a few worsts, and I've divided them up below. Actual worst. The time a custody dispute carried into a birthday party for a 3-year-old. Multiple people had guns and knives. Someone actually fired at the mother, and someone else tried to cut the father. This caused a full-on riot resulting in a lockdown. Luckily, we were very close to a police station and no one got hurt. Hilarious worst. 2 employees banging in the Chucky closet, where employees could change without being in the way of the kitchen or in sight of the kids, while one was wearing the Chucky head. This was bad because once the closet was unlocked/open, you were in sight, and we had a lot of horrified parents and terrified children, and it was really hard not to laugh. Creepy worst. One of the animatronics failed and became possessed. We were about 2 weeks away from becoming a stage 2 store. Next level of upgrades/improvements, including removing the animatronics. So they told us to just let it go and try to keep it in check. It sounded demonic and would turn on at random. In the middle of the happy birthday song, its head hit a point that it couldn't turn anymore, and got stuck moving a few inches back and forth. Then, caught on fire while still trying to demonically sing. Sad worst. We all had to get background checks if we had not been employed for 30 days, because a manager in our district, but not our store, turned out to not be taking care of his dying mother for a month. He was actually in jail for a DUI. The area manager was concerned about what else they didn't know because he had been with the company for like 25 years and worked up from a cashier. They ran a background check and he had multiple issues with the law. His family vacations were all timed with when he was in jail. And he was a registered intimate offender. Yikes. That last one is not good. A registered intimate offender working at a Chuck E. Cheese is not what I would have expected. Fair enough on the background checks, I guess. Also, what is it with employees banging in the Chuck E. closet? This is the second one, right? And with the Chuck E. head on, come on. People, just get it together. Story 10. Worked at Chuck E. Cheese for nearly 2 years during high school, and then again later on for another year. The worst parts almost always had to do with the parents, of course. The one that sticks out in my head the most is the super drunk, very unattractive older woman who stuck her hands down the front of my pants. It was just after I started. I was 15 and spent the first few months there working the game room floor. This lady came up to me saying one of the machines was not giving out tickets, and I needed to check it out for her. I sat down on the stool to open up the panel and check things out. During this time, she began rubbing my back, saying how cute I was and how much of a help I was being. It was about this time I realized she reeked of booze and was drunk. Next thing I knew, one of her hands was down the front of my shorts and she had found herself the prize she was after. I quickly sprang up from my seat saying I had to get some tools from the back. I went and told the games manager what happened. I'm not really sure what happened after that as I stayed in the back for a while. Next time I came back out, she was gone, thankfully. As a whole, I look back at my time working there with fond memories. Our place was almost entirely staffed with high school or young college kids. Had a ton of great times there and the pizza kicked butt. But yes, cleaning crap out of the sky tube sucks. Edit. Just remembered the craziest thing that happened while I worked there. Next door to us was the DMV, and one day a lady parked in the fire lane in front of it to help her elderly passenger inside to find a seat. Well, in the time it took her to do that, a tow truck swooped in to tow her. This happened fairly frequently in our parking lot, so my coworker buddy and I got closer to the glass at the front of the store to watch the shenanigans. The tow truck backed right up to the car, lifted the front end, and started pulling away with it. As the towed car passed our windows, we realized there were kids in the back seat. My buddy and I ran out the front doors of the store and started chasing after the guy screaming about the kids. We finally caught up to him in the back of the parking lot where he would usually secure the car to the truck, before taking it to the lot and told him what he did. He just said, "Oh crap," dropped the car, and took off. At this point, the mom of the kids had run to where we were at, understandably screaming about her babies. The cops were called, and since we knew which company the truck belonged to, the tow truck driver eventually showed back up. Not sure how much trouble the driver actually got in, but the cops were telling us that the law states that tow truck drivers must verify there are no passengers in the car before doing a snatch and grab. Adrenaline was definitely pumping with me and my coworker for a while after that one. Story 11. I have a good friend who used to work at Chuck E. Cheese. Him and his fellow coworkers conspired over the span of a few months to steal the various pieces of the suit. They would claim that this part got ripped or some kid messed up this part and we had to throw it out until they had a full suit. For what reason, you ask? Literally just to take turns showing up to parties in the full suit to make a bunch of drunk people super stoked. Story 12. I worked at one for several years. I didn't have extremely horrible things happen to me though. I was a game tech, which meant I would unclog tokens and perform minor repairs on games, while also delivering pizza to tables and cleanup. Things I can remember that did happen that were weird/funny were 1. Having to escort drunk people out at closing. Cashiers would try to limit people's intake, but when others would buy for them, they would still get plastered. 2. Parents fighting over video games. Never had an issue with kids, though. It was always the parents wanting their little snowflakes to play on some game, usually skee-ball. We were told to not try and break them up. Manager would just call the cops. So I would go over to them and say they could either leave or deal with the cops. They always left before the cops arrived. 3. Got hit with skee balls a few times when going up on the lanes to unclog a ball or fix something. Nothing major, but it got to the point of making eye contact with all the kids before going up. With warnings, I would throw them back. 4. Riding the drink trays down the slide at closing time and getting up to some pretty impressive speeds and sliding across the floor. 5. Cleaning out the tubes that run around the ceiling and finding crap and puke and stuff up there. 6. Seeing how dirty the ball pit was. Seriously, don't let your kids go in there, because they only get cleaned out like every few months. And if some kid pees in it, unless we get told, we don't know. 7. Cleaning up the massive mess some people leave after doing their DIY party. Found dirty diapers and all kinds of mess under the tables that made me question how they can even live with themselves after making such a massive mess and just leaving it. 8. Not me, but another person wearing the Chucky costume got inappropriately touched by some cougar. Not that he complained, but I know that a few of the times it would be one of the female staff in the costume and could imagine it going down worse for the guest in that situation. 9. A tech replacing a broken CRT in a game, and while lifting the tube/electronics, holds it with the tube out and pressed it against his thigh. It proceeds to discharge into his leg, leaving him in a fetal position and me laughing so hard I had to close the door to the repair room to stop laughing. 10. For a while I was emptying the tokens from all the games every Sunday. Would start out with clean nitrate gloves. By the end of the day, they would be a dull gray/gold color. I stopped trying to handle coins after doing the gig and realizing how dirty most money is, especially stuff handled by those little walking waste dump children. Who's out there touching Chuck E. Cheese? Like, you shouldn't be inappropriately touching anyone. It's in the name, inappropriate. But Chuck E. Cheese of everything out there? People are weird, man. People are so weird. Story 13. Not my story, but my dad's. This was decades ago. He worked as the man in the suit, and all his friends knew it. He had this one friend, we can call him Gene, who liked to take things over the top. He was working, and suddenly, my dad hears a roar. He turns to see his buddy Gene sprinting at him, full speed, no stop in sight. Boom. My dad is on the ground, head off, and the only thing heard was the screams of young children. My dad got fired that day. Story 14. This happened 15 years ago or so. I was designated to be the Big Cheese himself. A glorious honor. And the fact that I was one of the only guys that worked there, which meant I was almost always the chosen one for that hot suit. This day, a football team was having a party there, like 12 or 10-year-olds or something. My manager knew what was going to happen. Me, though, my naive young brain only had innocent thoughts about making children happy. Then, the coach playfully tosses me a football. In my vision, at least, so I actually did catch it. Then it happened. A horde of these 10-year-olds descended upon me in the cramped area between two long tables. Valiantly as I tried, these little demons proceeded to tackle me onto the ground. I thankfully didn't break anything and I kept my head from falling off while being knocked around. But I was upset. As soon as they got off me, I got up and left to go to the back to take off the outfit. Another time, the same manager as the last story made me work off the clock, but I was too young and dumb to document and report it. Story 15. Former employee, 6 months in high school. 1. A family racked up a $300 bill and tried to pay for it with food stamps. 2. Two families got into a fight during their kid's birthday party and had to be escorted by the police out. I later found one of their weaves on the table. 3. I got kicked in the crotch while in the Chucky suit. I'm a girl and it still hurt. 4. A little girl asked me when the real Chucky was going to come out because I was too short to be the real Chucky. 5. A mom wanted to show her kid that under the costume it was a real person and asked if I would take off Chucky's head to show her daughter. I did, and the kid got even more freaked out thinking that the mouse had engulfed me. I've repressed a lot of the memories, but this is what I can remember. Story 16. I remember when I worked at that crap hole. I had to take the coins out of the machines and refill the tickets and clean. Worst thing that happened was not the crap or vomit in the tubes above that the kids crawl in, but instead the time that a kid apparently had to take a crap, but didn't want to go to the bathroom because he would lose all his progress. So he takes a crap right where he is standing. Guess he was 3 tokens deep, so he was committed to the game. Well, at one point he loses and runs out of tokens. Guess what he does? If you guessed walk away with the crap on the floor like it wasn't his, you're wrong. He grabs the crap and smears it all over the machine like he's frosting a cake. Full-on tantrums while trying to talk crap. Then just wipes their hands on the carpet. Glad I heard this from a coworker. I do not envy being that child's parents. Sounds like they have their hands full with that one. Story 17. having to wear that costume. It's probably one of the most degrading things I've ever had to do. Having to clean up the bathrooms, watching children open up the containers with cheese and lick them and wonder how many times I've used condiments after children have licked them, catching strep throat several times, having a group of bored parents test the system of making sure the correct kid leaves with the correct parent. We don't usually check this because it would be obvious if you're taking a kid because the kid would be crying. That's usually when I would check in, or if the kid didn't look like the parent. Had some lady accuse us of spraying Windex in the salad. Manager told us we couldn't take sick days unless we had a doctor's note, which is against the law. Manager would scream and degrade us, teenagers, in front of whoever, having to close at the end of the night because we would basically be cleaning up after children, having to deal with crappy parents, having parents complain about our attitude because we didn't want to be around their crappy kids, having kids constantly run at you while trying to deliver a pizza, wheelies, having to clean the sky tubes after a kid crapped in them, having to work with teenagers who are not the nicest group of people, mothers dropping their children's diapers on the floor instead of the trash can, and I've blocked the rest out. If that is only the stuff OP didn't block out, oh dear. I'm so sorry, OP. You've been through a lot, soldier. Story 18. Not the worst, actually pretty good depending on your perspective. My dad used to manage one back in the mid-80s, and would always go through the cash registers at the end of every night and trade in his own pocket change for all of the rare vintage coinage that teenagers would steal from their parents' stashes. He amassed a great collection of silver coins and other discontinued currency. Mercury dimes, buffalo nickels, etc. He still has all of it to this day. Story 19. I've been at Chuck E. Cheese for 4 years. I'm a cashier, and I remember I had a closing shift one night. Cashiers close down the cash area, salad bar, beverage bar, and restrooms. At least at my location. I usually leave the restrooms last, so on that night I had finished up everything else and went to clean restrooms. My location is typically very clean, so I never had an issue. Until that day. When I walked into the women's room, I saw what no employee wants to see in the restrooms. It was in the biggest stall. Just imagine poop. But everywhere. On the walls, on the seat, on the floor. It was like semi-solid, almost liquid-like. On the floor near the drain was more crap. Imagine the crap emoji, but in real life, that's what was there. I remember a coworker came in and Snapchatted it for some reason. I have no idea how a human could have possibly accomplished this. I called my manager for backup. He came in and screamed. I screamed. We then cleaned it up begrudgingly. I wore like 5 pairs of gloves at the same time. Took us far longer than usual. I wasn't happy, to say the least. Luckily, it has never happened since. Nothing has ever been worse than that. Story 20. I was about 8 and being a goof. I saw the Chuck E. Cheese guy in costume and we were playing. I gave him a playful little kick in the shin while giggling like a little maniac. Well, he played along and gave me a light little tap on my shin with his shoe, but it wasn't a shoe. It was like a big, solid rubber cartoony brick of rubber. He didn't mean to hurt me at all, but just that little tap basically rolled up a few layers of skin very easily and bruised the hell out of my leg. At that instant, I stopped screwing with Mr. Mouse and silently endured my agony while pretending I wasn't in pain. I knew he didn't mean it even then, but it hurt really bad, and I just sort of wandered off. Now that I'm 20 years older, I'm mortified to think of the headlines and crucifixion that would have followed in modern times. Child plays with frustrated employee. Employee lashes out and strikes child. It's sad to think about how every little thing these days can end in a lawsuit. I can 100% recall him moving his foot forward in basically slow motion and barely tapping my shin, which instantly peeled up a few layers of skin. Would have been terrible if it was the age of cameras and I'd started crying or something. Then they would have video evidence of the abuse and the man's life wouldn't have been the same. Whee, Chuck E. Cheese. Props to OP for keeping it together at the age of 8. 8-year-old me definitely would have tried to make a show of it and been like, like full-on soccer fall. Also, I feel like his last sentence, "Wee Chuck E. Cheese," good summation of the whole video. Thank you so much for watching this one. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.